Hello, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Kevin Gallagher. I'm from New York University, and I'm here to talk to you about peeling the onion's user experience layer, examining naturalistic use of the Tor browser. This is joint work with Samir Patil from Indiana University Bloomington, as well as Brendan Dolan-Gavitt, Damon McCoy, and Nasir Memon, also from NYU. I'm going to keep this brief because I imagine that there are a lot of individuals who are already familiar with Tor, but I'm going to give a very slight background for anybody who might not be. Tor is an anonymity network that allows you to access any resource on the internet available by TCP anonymously. And it does so by building a circuit of 3 volunteer-run nodes. An entry node, an entry guard, a middle node, and an exit node. However, this only anonymizes the network layer, and there are still many opportunities on the application layer for individuals to stand out. This could be something as trivial as a tracking cookie for web browsing, or things that are a little bit more malicious and well hidden, such as user agent tracking, fingerprinting even based on the size of your screen, etc. And of course, the goal with anonymity is to blend in with the crowd so that this way you can access a resource and any adversary would not know which person from the crowd was accessing that resource. And towards this end, the Tor project released the Tor Browser bundle, which now just the Tor browser, which implements a whole bunch of these anti-tracking features, such as more uniform user agent strings, even a fixed window size that it launches on for all individuals who are using it. But unfortunately, the user experience of the Tor browser is not very well known. And that led us to the research question. How do users experience everyday naturalistic web browsing when using the Tor browser? And a lot of people may ask, well, why is this important? Going back to this idea of a crowd, the more friendly you make the user experience for the Tor browser, the more you can potentially grow this crowd, giving yourself a better arena to hide in. So, therefore, our goals were to study naturalistic Tor use. That is, without a lab setting or some sort of instruction sheet for participants. In addition, we wanted to preserve the privacy of our participants and not collect URLs or screen captures, except whenever they decided to share such things. Lastly, we wanted a very fine-grained data, akin to that of a lab study, but over a longer period of time. To attempt to achieve these goals, we created 3 questionnaires. One that would determine why any issues that individuals came across while they were using the Tor browser. Another that would determine why an individual would want to switch from a Tor browser to another browser if they decided to make that switch. And a third questionnaire to determine why individuals would bypass the Tor browser altogether and simply launch another browser such as Firefox or Google Chrome to achieve a certain task. In addition, for participants who are interested, we set up a one-on-one interview to get a little bit more qualitative data. And finally, we asked participants to submit a write-up to explain what aspects, user experience aspects of the Tor browser they enjoyed, and which user experience aspects they did not enjoy and indeed caused them frustration or to stop using the Tor browser. In a lab setting, providing these instruments at the correct time is fairly simple. If an individual comes across a user experience issue, they can simply raise their hand and be presented with the appropriate survey or ask some questions. But if we want them to be able to do this in the privacy of their own home, without any unrealistic settings, things get a little bit more complicated. If we try to heavily monitor their machine in order to understand when they come across an issue, this can be privacy invasive, which would violate our second goal. So we had to create a new method, and we created a Python script that simply looked for the launch and closing of browser processes on the machine. And according to these process transitions, these state transitions, launched the appropriate questionnaire. So let's walk through it. Upon installation, the script would simply begin by checking browser states. If a participant launched the Tor browser, it would change state to Tor browser open. Or if they opened another browser, it would change state to other browser open. So sticking with the example of the Tor browser, if a participant launched the Tor browser and then closed the Tor browser, we would change state from Tor browser open to Tor browser questionnaire, where the appropriate questionnaire would be spawned for them to answer. Upon the completion of this questionnaire, we would return back to the initial state. For individuals who open the Tor browser and then open another browser, we would change state to browser switch. As soon as either of the browsers were closed, we would provide the browser switch questionnaire, and when that was closed, we would return to the original state. The code is open source and available online for anybody to check, and indeed the participants were also given the ability to check the script as well for correctness or any concerns they may have. The link will be on the last slide for anybody who's interested. We had 19 participants from the Indiana University Bloomington who were enrolled in a library sciences course. There were I believe 8 male, 7 female, and a few others who were unwilling to provide demographic data. We had a young sample, on average 20 years old, predominantly white with a few Hispanic and Asian. Only 3 had used Tor before. We believe that though this isn't a representative sample of all Tor users, it certainly can hit a demographic of new Tor users or individuals who are considering using Tor for private browsing. And though this sample likely doesn't come across all issues that individuals who use the Tor browser come across, that doesn't mean that the issues that we found are not present in other people's browsing. For our data, we got 121 questionnaire responses. We had 11 individuals who were interested in following up with interviews, and all 19 participants provided write-ups. So with that, let's talk a little bit about our findings. Individuals came across a lot of user experience issues while using the Tor browser. We have encounter frequencies. We have 8 overall user experience issues with encounter frequencies for 6, and we're not counting other here. I can talk a little bit about that in the limitations. And we're going to start by talking about the bad, and then we'll go into talking about the positive experience of the user interface. So as you saw in the word cloud, the largest issue was broken functionality. If an individual wanted to, say, read the news anonymously, unfortunately, while it works in Firefox, there are possibilities that it may not work in the Tor browser. This provides an issue, especially for at-risk populations. If they would like to read news that, say, their government would not want them to read, they're forced to either make a decision, access that news insecurely, or not at all. In addition, like previous works, we discovered that there was a large differential treatment issue, mainly in the form of CAPTCHAs, with some participants claiming that they had to go through multiple chains of CAPTCHAs before they were allowed to even post a simple Google search query. Similarly, we had participants who came across improper geolocation issues. So many individuals would, say, submit a search query or try to access a news website and be served results that were either in a language they didn't understand, or if it was in a language that they understood, could have no relevance to them because even though I speak English and a lot of people in Australia speak English, there could be different customs or things that would make my query, the answers that I receive from my query, absolutely irrelevant for me. In addition, a lot of our participants had issues with the lack of convenience features in the Tor browser. And indeed, these are convenience features that they have come to expect from other browsers, things like easy access to bookmarks and password managers. This is particularly interesting because in the Tor browser, you can use bookmarks, yet we've had quite a few of our participants claiming that they couldn't. And we believe that this has something to do with the fact that the import and export functionality is hidden behind active click and seek, which is not just a browser problem, but indeed is the same in Firefox as well. However, they correctly determined that password managers for the Tor browser does not exist, mainly to a principle for the Tor browser design called disk avoidance. But it's not all bad. There are many things that participants enjoyed about the Tor browser. Primarily, they enjoyed the learn-as-you-go feeling that they achieved when they were using the Tor browser. One aspect of this is warnings that occur right as they commit an action that could lead them to be de-anonymized. For example, here, that is a little blurrier than I intended, but when you maximize the screen, you get a warning that tells you that your screen size can be used to try to track you across websites. In addition, if you access a website that tries to extract HTML5 canvas data, the Tor browser will warn you that the website is trying to access that and will allow you to either go forward with it or deny it. Another thing that the participants particularly enjoyed is being able to see where their traffic was going. And they stated that it provided them with a sense of security to know that there wasn't simply a direct connection between them and the website, but being able to visualize where their, for lack of a better term, their traffic was bounced to or bounced around in. Based on both the good and the bad that was reported to us by the participants, we have a few implications. First, we'd like to talk a little bit about the convenience features. One of the implications we have is perhaps allowing for an adversary selection feature to enable or disable disk avoidance features. For example, if we have adversaries, or the individuals who use the Tor browser had adversaries that are mainly remote, then the disk avoidance feature may not make sense for them. Two potential adversaries that fit this are ISP level or certain passive government adversaries, where they're unlikely to access your physical machine, but they could be trying to track you through other means. On the other hand, if I'm worried more about a coffee shop hacker who might access my laptop when I walk away, or say a snooping family, and I'm worried about them using the password manager on the Tor browser or looking at my bookmarks, then it might make a lot of sense to turn on these disk avoidance features. But beyond just the convenience issues, there was also the issue of broken functionality, and we suggest addressing this in two ways. First is the development of a Tor friendliness scanner that will scan the internet and provide actionable suggestions that would allow website operators and individuals who want to start a website to provide their content in a manner that is friendly for Tor users. This could be some simple things like setting up an onion address, or something a little bit more complicated like avoiding fine-grained timing measurements, because that could be used to profile your hardware. Another way of potentially addressing this is by providing settings and plugins for popular content management systems like WordPress or like Grav that would allow individuals with fairly limited knowledge and budget to set up a Tor-friendly website with the click of a few buttons. And this could provide specific functionality like login that doesn't require JavaScript for individuals using the Tor browser on higher settings, security slider settings, or overall templates that do not utilize certain JavaScript libraries. Like every academic study, our study has some limitations. Mainly, we identify two types of limitations. The first is the sample. We do have a sample that's quite specific, but again, we do not believe that any of these user experience issues that they came across would be only focused to that one group. We believe that other groups would also come across these issues. We just may have missed some issues that other groups would come across, making this study a little bit conservative in its findings. In addition, we had some script limitations. This came in the form of false negatives and false positives. It is possible that we have missed, due to the heuristic nature of determining whether or not browsers were open and closed on certain platforms, we may have missed the Tor browser being opened or closed, or another browser being opened or closed as a false negative. And in addition, we received a few reports of false positives during this study. We're not 100% sure why this happened, but we suspect that it has to do with Electron apps being based on Chrome. So we have some future work. The future work, of course, includes collecting user experience issues with wider and more diverse samples in order to address more specific user experience issues with at-risk populations. In addition, validating and testing empirically the recommendations that we propose in this paper. So in summary, we provided a method to determine user experience issues from naturalistic Tor use. We determined that there are frequent and multiple hurdles that individuals who choose to use the Tor browser come across. And we provide some recommendations drawn from the data about how the user experience of the Tor browser could be improved. If there are any questions, I'll take them now.
Hi. So what would be the motivation for a website developer to actually make a Tor version?
Well, there are many motivations. There, if, for example, you're providing some commerce or some good digital service and you take Bitcoin, there is no reason, of course, to not have an Onion address, because they can still pay and receive your service digitally. So, but for news organizations who simply want to get the word out, for journalists, independent journalists, or indeed for Facebook, who has an Onion address, who are simply interested in allowing individuals who are in oppressive regimes or in places that censor Facebook to access their service, they can run an Onion service.
So, for example, like CNN that you showed,
yes,
it might be using Google Ads as a service, right? So for showing ads,
yes,
and Google needs behavioral, like who is accessing the website. Google needs that.
yes.
So, like if CNN is not providing that data to Google, wouldn't that be a discouraging factor for them? Like if they open a Tor address and
it could. However, so there's very I speculate that there would be a small number of individuals who would access the CNN Onion service and in an untrackable way, and that it probably wouldn't hurt their profit margins too much. That instead, many of the individuals who would access something like CNN would be people who are coming from oppressive regimes who cannot access it in any way now anyway. So it's not like they're missing on a market that can't access them currently.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your talk. It was very interesting.
Oh, thank you.
So I was wondering, as part of your method, so every
Sure.
time you close a browser,
Yes.
the user's getting a pop-up and a questionnaire to fill in.
Yes and no. So most of the times, yes, but in order to avoid pop-up fatigue, we give them a break of 20 minutes after they close a browser.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask whether there was a risk of this biasing the results from people being less willing to change browsers on less bad UX issues just because of the inconvenience?
Yes. So we did ask if the script changed their behavior in any way from typical browsing behavior. As if I remember correctly, we only had one participant who said yes, and they said that it pushed them more to mobile browsing because they were a little bit annoyed with the pop-ups. But as far as they were willing to tell us, that is the only way that the script affected their behavior.
Fair enough. And just one more quick question.
Sure.
So, did you see any effects? I noticed you hadn't mentioned the fact that people have to re-log in every time they use Tor Browser. If I remember correctly, it defaults to incognito mode. So
yes.
Yeah.
So yes, this was one of the convenience issues that we mentioned. So the convenience issues were particularly interesting because it was the only portion in which the participants were willing to discuss both the reasons for and against having the not having a password manager. So many participants said, we understand that perhaps this can lead us to be vulnerable, and in some ways it's good that it's out, but man, I really wish I had my passwords right now because I'm tired of logging in all the time.
Right.
Yes, this was a hurdle for them, and that's why we suggest the select your adversary type of wizard to enable or disable this feature as necessary.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for the talk. I really liked this methodology. I was
Thank
curious if you could comment on whether participants trusted you or were comfortable with it, or how much work you had to do to try to explain this.
Well, one participant stated that he read the code and understood it and said it was it did exactly as it was meant to do, and trusted us based on verification. The rest of them didn't mention whether or not they did trust us or not. Unfortunately, that's not something they decided to tell us, particularly because I'd imagine that's something they thought we wouldn't want to hear if they didn't trust us.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, because this is very beneficial for other research work, especially within Tor security. Just curious to know that do you have the comments about in Tor there is a multi-tab, right?
Yeah.
That allow you to like go into the new websites.
Yes.
Do they? I mean, in terms of the user behaviors, have you observed like these types of the behavior that user just using one tab or multi-tab?
Unfortunately, we don't know if they use one tab or multiple tabs. That's not something anybody decided to tell us. They just told us that they more or less used browsing the same as they typically would.
Yeah, because in okay, yeah, just to let you know that it's provide beneficial thing to other research. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Jared Smith, Oak Ridge National Lab in the University of Tennessee. I just had a quick question about whether any of your future work might involve sampling from journalists or election officials or people that would, I mean, I don't know any college students that use Tor. I mean, personally, even
Sure.
security, like we do research on Tor. We publish papers in it, and I mean, I use it just to good onion sites, but not that it's not a good approach for general. Is this usable? Which I think this is great for.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts on targeting that audience of people?
I would love to do this. I have a little bit of a hard time like getting participants from those fields, mainly because if you're an at-risk population, your barrier of trust for researchers is presumably going to be a little bit higher. I would very, very much love to do this, and if there's anybody who can help get me in touch with these communities, please talk to me after. I have not used my drink ticket, so if those are still redeemable, I will use it for you. Come talk with me.
Cool. Thank you.
So one of your recommendations for how websites can help people was for them to set up onion addresses.
Yes.
Did any of your participants actually use any onion sites?
I speculate that the answer to that is no, though no individual told us. Out of the voluntary URL capture that we were given, I can say no onion addresses were there. But as far as like certainty, that's all I can say.
Fair enough. So would this actually kind of help the general populace to use Tor? Because it's actually introduces an extra 3 hops to the, or is it an extra 2 hops to the user? So adds to the latency.
As of the newest version of Onion services, that's no longer true. I think individuals who are running Onion services that only care about remaining within the Tor network can specify that they only want 1 hop. Anybody, if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, but I believe that's true. So now there's, as long as it's configured in that way, there's very little barrier to entry for providing the...
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And moreover, so just like 2 weeks ago, Facebook was the first site to turn on this new, so they've been running an Onion service for a long time, but they just rolled out this new thing called the alt service header, which means if you go to facebook.com with Tor Browser, Facebook will tell your browser actually connect over the Onion service, but you won't know. So if you were doing any capturing of stats or anything, you would not have even seen that the user was actually using an Onion service. So Onion services are now just more secure ways to connect to the site, but it's transparent. It's transparent to the user.
I just read about that this morning, and I think it's super cool. Yeah, since this happened quite a bit before, just a few weeks ago, that would not bias our data in any way.